I am Asian American, but I am not a virus. My name is Daisy Trung, and this is my series called I Am, But I Am Not. Journey with me as we explore the different stereotypes and misconceptions of Asian Americans that I've seen and experienced myself. With the amplification of anti-Asian sentiment during COVID-19 and the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, I will uncover and debunk those myths and share with you the inside view on the thoughts, opinions, and experiences of those within our society.
So let's start off with your I am, but I am not statement.
I am an Asian American woman, but I am not a fetish.
And then we can continue with introductions. Just state your name, your occupation, and your ethnicity. Oh, and your pronouns.
Well, my name is Thuy Tien Nguyen. I am a student at OSU, and I am Vietnamese. Oh, my pronouns are she, her, hers.
We will just go on with asking about your upbringing. What was growing up like for you?
I was originally born in San Jose, California, so I spent most of my baby years in California. I don't remember much of it, but for the most part, I was raised in Oregon, Salem, Oregon, and moving from California to Oregon. You know how California is there's a big Asian community, and then in Oregon there's not as much, and I just felt like I only saw only a few Asians around me, so I felt it was kind of hard to really feel connected and belong in the community here, since there wasn't a big community, like Asian community, and I didn't have much family here either, so I felt sort of isolated from everyone else, and I didn't really, feel belong.
What were your parents and family like?
I haven't met a majority of my family, from both sides of my family, my dad and my mom. They have a big family, they have a lot of siblings, and I've only met a few of my uncles and aunts, but I would say for the ones I've met, that they're the typical Asian family member, but yeah.
What was school like? Did you ever feel like you didn't belong there? And how was your relationship with other students of color?
I was raised in Salem, so there's a really large Hispanic community. Most of my friends were Hispanic, so being both people of color, we shared in the similarities, and we could compare ourselves with the things that we struggled with facing as people of color. I didn't see a lot of Asian people in my schools because there wasn't a large community, but for the most part, I enjoyed my friends and the things I learned in school and everything.
Are you a second generation or are you?
I am second generation.
Okay, cool. Do you happen to know your parents' immigration story or anything like that?
Oh yeah, they've said it a lot to me. My mom, she said that she came to the US because she had a family member in the US, and she got a sponsor to be able to come here with her dad and brother. Yeah, she just got here through there. And my dad, he traveled through by boat. A lot of refugees went through that route, and he had to stay in different countries to be able to finally get to the US. And from there, he applied to be a citizen and everything.
Okay. Do you remember your first experience talking with Black people about your parents?
Most of the times that I've talked with my parents about Black people were from news about Black people. So sometimes we would discuss things like for example, the recent Black Lives movement. They've talked about how it's really sad and everything. And I just feel it's kind of sad that most of the conversations I've had with my parents are about those types of things, and there's not a really happy or experience I've had with them to talk that we talked about Black people. But over the years, I've seen them become more aware of the struggles that Black people go through, because like back then my parents they were kind of like not against them, but sort of like our traditional Asian parents. They're kind of like hard to be accustomed to that type of stuff. But
I see it. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you remember the first time that you heard of the term Black Lives Matter?
it was during the COVID pandemic, like the beginning of the COVID pandemic when everything was in lockdown and everything. I just remember seeing on my Instagram a lot of posts, and starting from the with all the police brutality against Black people and the injustices of their deaths and everything. And I saw like a bunch of that on my Instagram feed and stories of my friends sharing posts and just bringing awareness about it.
What do you think the term Black Lives Matter means to you now, since now we're a little bit more into the pandemic?
I definitely feel like at the initial start of it, it was really intense. Like everyone was talking about it. It was everywhere on my social media, and I was always being reminded of it every day. And over time, now that's like been almost a year now, I've been seeing less of it, but I can still see it everywhere, sort of. But it is being talked about a little bit less than before.
And do you feel like anti-Blackness is prevalent in your community, if you think it's prevalent at all?
I have never been to Vietnam, so I don't know like what the culture there is personally, but because of how modern everything is, I would say that the culture is more open to Black people in general. But I do think that there's probably some resistance to like change and being more open-minded about them. Some of like the still old-fashioned ways of thinking is still there, like within the older generation. Yeah.
Would you say that it's kind of hard to like talk about anti-Blackness, or if you know what colorism is, with the older generation, or if there's a generational gap in those discussions?
Yeah, I think it's a hard topic for the older generation to talk about because it's not something that they ever learned or like knew about when they were younger. They just thought, oh, it's that way, that's just how everything is supposed to be. So being able to talk about them that it isn't right and that we should be aware of our actions and how they affect people of color is it's a hard topic for them to understand and know about. Even for me, it's hard to like initiate the conversation with my parents because they usually like, oh, let's not talk about it. They just want to put it aside. Like that's not something that should concern us. But like being us, like we're people of color too, so we should be able to know what other people, the experiences of other people of color, so that we can improve ourselves and also just help other people know about those things too.
And do you think that your intersectionalities of gender and race affect your view of anti-Blackness?
Being Asian, I know that because of my skin color, I have more privileges than people who are more darker skinned than me. So I can't relate to those experiences that other people of color experience. But I still believe that we do share similarities in our experiences in some ways. And being a woman as well, like for women, we are born like at a disadvantage compared to men. So that's also something that for all ethnicities, that's something all women share, like the sexes and stereotypes of women and everything. So having both of those traits, it's really made me more open-minded and aware of the struggles of other people of color. Yeah, it's just made me more sensitive. I try to learn more about it and everything.
And what has been your experience as an Asian American in the United States?
For the most part, it's been pretty normal. Like, despite being in a community where there's not a lot of Asian people, I've never experienced anything racist or discriminatory towards me. I think because of not being in a really large Asian community, I feel more accustomed to my like American side more. Like I feel so like throughout my childhood, I've always felt like I've had a disconnect with my Asian side because I never really been to Vietnam either, and I haven't met the majority of my family over there as well. And just interacting with other people beside like that are not the same as me has kind of influenced my mindset as well and the culture that I am used to. I think it also has influenced my like language as well. I can speak Vietnamese, but I'm not like the most fluent at it, or I don't know everything. It's something that I've struggled throughout my life. Like I just felt like I wasn't totally Asian, but also not totally American. Like because of course I'm different. Everyone sees me as Asian here, but then if I were to go to Vietnam, they would definitely see me as different. Oh, she's from America. She's not like us and stuff like that. So yeah.
Glad you shared that. I think a lot of Asian Americans feel the same way. Have you heard of the model minority myth?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that that sort of narrative is erasure of the Asian American experience? Do you feel that personally at all?
I definitely do. I think focusing on like the accomplishments of like higher up people, like those that are more successful, really erases like the experiences of other Asian Americans in the US. Like I am definitely not the most affluent Asian American, and my family isn't either. And just hearing that about the Asian American model minority, like it just erases everything that my family has done, like their hardships and struggles throughout the years, and seeing how other people they believe in that and they're saying, oh, you don't have it as hard as other people. Like I've struggled a lot throughout my life, and like just seeing that being like our voices are not heard, like we're not being like treated the same as everyone else, and it just makes it frustrating for me to hear about that, and it's not true at all.
This resurgence, and I really hate that because that's terrible. This resurgence of like anti-Asian sentiment has kind of brought a lot of attention to like racism in general. How do you think this movement kind of intersects with anti-Blackness and Black Lives Matter?
I think it really just amplifies the struggles that people of color have always been going through, especially now because of the pandemic. Like everyone's not doing much right now. These news and stories are just being pushed to the forefront of what everyone is looking at on the news. And I think it's a really good opportunity, but it's also sad that it's taken everyone this long to really notice and be aware of the struggles that we've been facing. And I just think because of these things, it's really started like an initiative to take action and learn more about these facts and the stories of other people of color. I just really have hope for like in the near future that there's gonna be something done about this. Yeah.
A lot of people like to compare the movements of, you know, Stop Asian Hate and Black Lives Matter. Do you think that it's fair to compare them? Do you think it is detrimental to do that? What are your thoughts?
I definitely think that the movements should not be compared. Like it's not a competition of who has it hardest and who deserves more like awareness and stuff. They are both important movements, and I think they should both deserve the same attention and action towards. One day I was on Instagram and I saw someone posted on their story a TikTok of a Black lady. She was talking about like, oh, I'm not gonna talk about like the topic of Asian violence and everything because her experience with Asian Americans is like she has had racism from like Asian people, so that has influenced her mindset of if Asian Americans deserve any awareness at all. I definitely think that there is still work to be done for us as well to be less racist towards people of color and Black people. It's kind of sad how there's people who think that way, like because of us, we're sort of like a little bit more privileged than other people of color, that we don't deserve to be treated the same way and thought of the same way as people of color. I just hope that people know that not all Asians are the same, and we also deserve to be given the same respect and consideration of our struggles as well.
Have you talked to your family about recent events that have been happening against Asian Americans?
I went home for spring break, and one of the first things that me and my family talked about was about the shootings in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was kind of sad, like, honestly. The first thing that I came home to was the topic of the deaths of these Asian Americans. And it really brought like a somber tone to like me coming home and everything, and it made me even more aware of what we were facing, because those Asians worked at a massage parlor or something like that, and my mom is a nail technician, so I felt like I could really see like the similarities of what those victims were in the setting of, and my mom too. So I felt really scared for her and for my sister as well, and like my family in general. Like if we walked out in the street, would we face the same treatment as a lot of Asian Americans were facing now? And I just felt like personal to me.
And how do you think the media and the government have been dealing with it?
After the shooting happened, I felt a little bit overwhelmed of everything, so I took like a pause and looking at the news and what the updates. So I'm not totally up to date with everything has happened, but I know that there's conversation happening and my friends are aware of it and everything on social media. From what I've seen, I feel like there hasn't been a lot of action in terms of the government and everything. It's just more like, oh, we acknowledge it, but I feel like there's not much action happening besides just talking about it. And taking action is really important in this situation.
Do you think that I think obviously there's more to be done from, I guess, like the media, from the government, from companies? Just what are your thoughts on what needs to be done?
I remember on Instagram, sorry, there's like a lot of Instagram stories, but I saw a post about the names of the victims from the shooting. Their names weren't even written properly on the news. They missed like the second part of their first name. And I was like, that's something that's really basic. And just seeing how those little microaggressions against Asian Americans, like not being aware of the culture differences of Asian Americans, it makes me feel like not important and that we're not being acknowledged properly. My name is Tweetian. I have two parts of my name that are slightly apart. And personally, a lot of people that I've met like for the first time, they always like say Twee or they miss the second part of my name. So it doesn't affect me personally. I mean, it sort of does, but not as much as other people would think. But just seeing that makes me like feel that I'm not important enough for people to understand and learn more about the importance of my name and my culture. And I feel like the media outlet needs to really be more aware of that and learn about those differences. And the government as well, they also need to like understand that our names and the culture is different.
Thank you for sharing. So we're kind of at the end of our interview here. What is one thing that you want audience members to take away or remember from your interview?
I just hope that my stories and the things I talked about really bring more awareness to Asian Americans and their stories as well, and just bring more awareness to like the Black Lives Matter movement as well, and the Asian community to be more open about that topic and talking about that as well. And I just hope that this documentary in general really helps bring to light the recent discussions that have happened during the pandemic.
Okay, cool. Thank you.